Ever since we moved into this old house, my dog Buster has been my shadow. He follows me everywhere, from the kitchen to the bathroom, even waiting outside the shower. He's a classic Velcro dog, but there's one room, just one, that he absolutely refuses to enter. It's the small spare bedroom at the end of the upstairs hallway. The first time I noticed it was moving day. We were hauling boxes, and Buster was happily sniffing every new corner of the house. But when I went to drop a box in that spare room, he stepped dead in the doorway. His tail tucked, his ears went flat, and he started whining. I tried to coax him in with a treat, his favorite kind, but he wouldn't budge. He just stared into the room with this look of pure fear. I figured he was just overwhelmed by the move and didn't think much of it. But weeks turned into months, and his behavior never changed. The room became his invisible barrier. If I threw his favorite squeaky toy into the room, he would just sit at the threshold, whimpering, until I went and got it for him. He would chase a ball down the hallway at full speed, but slam on the brakes right before the doorway, as if he'd run into a glass wall. It was bizarre. The room itself is pretty ordinary. It's got a big window, a closet, and pale yellow walls. Nothing scary. I use it for storage now, mostly filled with things we don't need every day. My friends think it's hilarious. They'd come over and try to lure him in. They'd sit in the middle of the floor, calling his name, waving bacon. Nothing. Buster would just pace anxiously in the hallway, refusing to cross the line. One night, I was working late on my computer in the living room. It was around 2 a.m., and the house was dead silent. Suddenly, I heard a sound from upstairs. It was a faint scratching noise. At first, I thought it was just the house settling. But then I heard it again, more distinct this time. It was coming from the direction of the spare room. My heart started pounding. Buster, who had been sleeping at my feet, shot up. His fur was standing on end, and he let out a low, guttural growl, staring intently up the stairs. I grabbed a heavy flashlight and slowly made my way up, with Buster growling softly behind me, though he stopped at the top of the stairs, refusing to come down the hall. As I got closer to the spare room, the scratching stopped. I stood outside the closed door, listening. Silence. I took a deep breath, turned the knob, and pushed the door open, shining the flashlight beam inside. The room was exactly as I had left it. Boxes were stacked against the wall. An old armchair was covered in a dust sheet. I scanned every corner with the light. The window was locked, the closet was shut, there was nothing. No sign of a mouse, a raccoon, nothing that could have made that noise. I checked everywhere, behind the boxes, under the chair, nothing. I felt a cold chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. I shut the door, my mind racing. What could have made that noise, and why did it terrify Buster so much? The next day, I decided to do a little experiment. I set up my old GoPro in the room, positioned it on a stack of books facing the door, and pressed record. I made sure the door was slightly ajar, just enough for the camera to see into the hallway. I wanted to see what Buster did when I wasn't around, and maybe, just maybe, catch whatever was making that sound. I went about my day, trying to forget about the camera. That evening, after taking Buster for a long walk, I retrieved the GoPro. I plugged it into my laptop, my heart thumping with a mix of excitement and dread. I fast-forwarded through hours of footage. It was mostly just a static shot of an empty room and the hallway. Buster would occasionally wander past the doorway, but never looked in. Then I saw it. Around the same time I heard the noise the night before, the footage showed the door, which I had left slightly ajar, slowly creak open a little wider on its own. There was no draft, no one else was home, it just moved. A few seconds later, a small, dark orb, like a shadow, zipped across the floor from one side of the room to the other. It was so fast I had to replay it in slow motion to even be sure I saw it. It wasn't an insect or a trick of the light. It was a distinct, shadowy shape. Just as the orb disappeared from view, the camera captured Buster appearing at the doorway. He didn't bark or whine. He just stood there, completely still, staring into the spot where the shadow had been. Then the scratching sound started, clear as day on the audio. It sounded like nails dragging against wood, coming from inside the closet. Buster backed away slowly from the doorway and then bolted down the hall. My blood ran cold. I watched the clip over and over, the door moving, the shadow orb, the scratching. It wasn't my imagination. There was something in that room, something that my dog could sense all along. I grew up in a very practical family. We didn't believe in ghosts or anything supernatural, but watching that footage, I had no other explanation. I did some research on the house's history. It took some digging at the local library, but I finally found something. The house was built in the early 1900s. In the 1920s, a family with a young child lived here. According to an old newspaper article, the child tragically passed away in the house from an illness. The article mentioned the child's favorite room was the small bedroom at the end of the hall. They had a small dog they adored, a terrier, who reportedly refused to leave the room for weeks after the child died. Suddenly, it all clicked. The scratching, the shadowy figure low to the ground. Could it be the spirit of that little terrier, still waiting in its favorite room? It sounds crazy, I know, but it's the only explanation that fits. It would explain why Buster, another dog, is so terrified. Maybe he senses the presence of another animal, one that isn't supposed to be there. Animals are said to be more sensitive to these things, right? I haven't slept well since. Every creak and groan of the old house makes me jump. I keep the spare room door firmly shut now. I even put a draft stopper at the bottom, as if that could keep a ghost out. Buster still won't go near it. In fact, he seems even more on edge now, often staring down the hallway, letting out a soft growl when the house is quiet. I've thought about getting the house blessed or calling in paranormal investigators, but a part of me is too scared to know more. What if stirring things up makes it worse? For now, we just coexist. Me, my dog, and whatever is in that room. The room my dog refuses to enter. I've started documenting everything, every little strange occurrence. Maybe one day I'll have a definitive answer. But for now, that door stays closed. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Let me know in the comments below. And if you have any similar stories, I'd love to hear them. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates on this strange old house.